Hi everyone. Today we have three authors visiting the channel, and they are Anna Stevens, the author behind Godblind Trilogy and The Stone Knife, and RJ Barker, the author behind Wounded Kingdom Trilogy and The Bone Ships. And then finally, Sam Hawke, the author behind Poison War Duology at the moment. And these three authors have something in common, even though they're all published by different publishers. Their upcoming books are all being released on the same date, on the 26th of November, right? Yeah. And so to start things off, please can each one of you tell us a bit about yourself and your upcoming book, preferably without spoilers. And maybe start from RJ.
I'm RJ Barker, as Petrik has said. You probably don't need me to tell you that again. I'm in the UK. I've done all sorts of stupid things with my life before I finally ended up books, which is my big love. And I love to write. That's what I write. I love doing it, and I can't stop. And this is my latest book, which is Call of the Bone Ships. Pretty fun. It's the second of the Bone Ship books. That the first one is up for the British Fantasy Award. Yay!
Nice.
And it's to talk about it with spells. It's set in a world where there are enormous boats and absolutely massive dragons and quite an unpleasant, unfair society. And it's about people who are trying to bring some hope back and put that society into a nicer place. Do they succeed? As it's the second book, probably not, because there's another one. The third one's really dull, but it's a big adventure in it, and it's set on the seas on a boat, and the people, and you can root for them, and there's kind of an underlying message, as I suppose in all of my books, about people finding who they are and trying to do the right thing, even at great personal cost. There you go.
Very nice. Okay.
Yeah, and massive dragons. I don't think we can stress the massive dragons bit enough.
Yeah, it is. Let's go with Anna next.
Hello, Anna Stevens, author of the Godblind Trilogy. My new series, The Songs of the Drowned, begins with The Stone Knife, which I have one of the limited edition copies here. Whoop, it's so big, it fell on my head. It's so pretty.
So much.
It's a story of empire and conquest and colonialism. It's also a story of family and found family and magic and monsters. So there's a sort of a linked theme to RJ's in that my monsters live in the water. And you don't want to really go anywhere near them whatsoever if you can possibly avoid it. There's a lot of shamanism and ancestor worship and stuff like that. And yeah, so it's the story of the Empire of Songs and their desire to conquer the whole peninsula in order to bring everyone under their magical song. And it's the story of the people of Tokoban and Yelotlan who are attempting to resist the invasion.
Nice. And let's go with Sam.
I realized as the others were talking that they had cleverly lined up their books all behind them, and I have not done that. I'm so sorry. I don't actually have any copies of my new one, so we're going to have to use our imagination. Sorry, I'm Sam Hawke. I'm at the other side of the world in Australia, in Canberra, and I wrote the Poison War duology, the first book, City of Lies, which I do have a copy of somewhere.
You have
son. Here we go.
Yay! I love that cover.
So this came out a few years ago, and I have very, very slowly produced the sequel, which is coming out with these lovely guys' books at the same time. My books are kind of fantasy closed room murder mysteries. The first one was set in a besieged city where our intrepid protagonists are a brother and sister who taste poison for the ruling family of the city. At the beginning of the story, they're their uncle, who was the current poison taster, and the chancellor, who he was trying to protect, are both poisoned by an unknown poison. And they are stuck in a besieged city trying to work out who's trying to kill them and the new chancellor, and why their own people are rising up against them. So yeah, City is really very much a closed room mystery, and kind of epitomizes my love of both the fantasy genre and the kind of old style spy thrillers and mysteries. I read an obscene amount of when I was a child. Yeah, so anyway, Hollow Empire, I'm trying to do this without spoilers. It's quite hard with a sequel, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's the mystery sequel. Anyway, so Hollow Empire picks up 2 years after the events of City, when they're kind of trying to settle into a new normal and deal with the fallout from the previous events. That's non-spoilery.
Yeah.
So it's kind of set around a giant spring festival, which is kind of like the Olympics and Carnival mixed together. But they've got a lot of visiting dignitaries and people from all around the world coming crammed into the city. And our heroes suspect that it's a perfect opportunity for someone to strike again at them. And they're right, there are witches and criminal gangs and terrorists and hilarity ensues.
So before this year, the previous book that the three of you published were pre-pandemic situation. And how have things changed for you, for all of you, in terms of writing and promoting your books? I assume that it's much more difficult now.
Yeah, writing is kind of a bust, isn't it? In this climate, where we're all kind of, I mean, not just the pandemic, but the sort of insanity that's been going on with the US election. It just doesn't feel like a super awesome time to be releasing a book. I mean, it's hard, just like all of the normal opportunities that you have to be kind of out there and getting your book in front of people and making connections and things aren't really there. But on the other hand, we've got more opportunities to do things like this, which as somebody who lives at the other side of the world from both my publishers and most of my readership, there are arguably some kind of good opportunities to do more of these sort of things so that we can actually connect to people. That's how it's been for me anyway.
I didn't realize how much I'd miss going out and doing like cons and appearances in bookshops and stuff like that, because I'm an odd thing in that I'm not a very sociable person. I like to be on my own, but I really love people, and I love doing this, meeting people, and it's quite good for me because they're reasonably short, and I can go back and just my own again. But I've really missed it, and I really miss seeing everybody, and that's the thing I've missed the most. I know quite a lot of writers have felt writing to be more difficult with being stuck in with the pandemic, and I haven't really. I think I've probably written more in that I live in my own head anyway, so I'm quite easy to entirely shut the world out, and it's gone. It's not a thing. It was a bit difficult when I had to homeschool a child. That got in the way because my wife's. She was here as well, but her work's more important than mine. Okay. You just write books. Okay. So that slowed me down quite a lot. But yeah, I would say that writing the Bone Ship books has been the hardest ones I've done so far. It took me longer than the Assassin books before I wrote them really quickly. And maybe I'm quite often, I think maybe stress and stuff are quite subconscious things for me. So maybe it was that slowing me down. Maybe I'm kind of just not thinking about it, because not thinking about things is a really good way I've found of getting over stuff. Just, oh, that looks unpleasant. I'll pretend it's not there.
How about you, Anna?
Yeah, I was one of those writers who struggled with productivity, especially through the early months of the lockdown here in the UK. I pretty much, I would say, halved my monthly word count, and it wasn't through lack of trying. It was just twice as difficult to get the words out. That does seem to be, I mean, touch wood, that seems to be getting better at the moment. I have been a little bit more productive the last sort of couple of weeks. Which is ironic because we have just gone back into lockdown again, but maybe I'm just more used to it this time around. But yeah, like RJ said, I have really missed doing events and conventions and stuff like that. But one thing that I did find is that I put out a call on Twitter and Instagram, and I just said, does anybody fancy doing an interview or a collaboration, either like this over, with video, or a podcast, or just a written interview. And the members of the book community have been brilliant, and I've had, I've got a good few number of interviews upcoming before and after the publication date, and probably more than I would have had otherwise.
Sorry.
So that's been really good in that, people have really said, yeah, we'd love to be involved. And I found that that's, so big shout out to everyone who's got in touch with me and said, yes, we'd love to do something, because, otherwise, publication date might pass without really, without so much as a ripple, really. So that has been really nice to see that, people are enthusiastic and want to get involved.
Yeah. Try that. I didn't even think of that. I'm going to steal that from you, Anna.
Go for it. Yeah, go for it.
The other thing I've been doing is
smart. I didn't do that.
I'm doing a thing called Writopolis, which is like a fortnightly writing chat, which I think Sam.
I thought you just said ride topless.
No, I do that all the time. But,
who are you?
Yeah,
talking about
on my Harley Davidson.
What the?
Sorry, Petrik, this always happens.
Yeah,
it's okay.
But that's been lovely. Every 2 weeks we've been sort of talking to somebody. It's been quite chaotic because I'm involved, and we have like a crowd of people that are starting to turn up quite regularly, and we're getting to know them. And I know Sam's going to come do it, and I can't remember if I've asked Anna. Probably have I not? Have I asked you or not? If I haven't, I am doing
so, but I will. I would love to.
I do it with my friend Kit, and I have a list of stuff, and he just goes, "Can you just organise yourself?" Failed entirely. Anyway, carry on.
It's part of your charm, I think.
Sorry?
It's part of your charm. You've got eccentric genius going on.
Yeah, we'd call it genius, but.
And so none of these are your first published book anymore, right? And do you think writing a book now become easier or much harder now than before?
Harder. It's really annoying.
Harder.
Yeah.
Harder?
You'd think it would get easier, but no, it's harder.
Oh.
Yeah, I don't know why. People say it's because you know what you're doing wrong, but I don't. It's not because there's an expectation of something to do, because I deliberately took quite a hard left turn with the Bone Ships. It's nothing like the Assassin books. And if people were expecting the Assassin books, sorry, you didn't get it. It's just, there is kind of, I think there's a pressure on me, and it's just me that's doing it, to be better all the time. That sort of, and this kind of feeling that it's just out of reach, that I can be a much better writer than I am. And I'm always chasing that. And I think that's what makes it harder. I think the further you go along, because you've kind of done it now, you've done 3 books and they've signed you up for more, so you can clearly do it. Now it's about doing it better. And I don't mean success either. I don't really ever think about that. It's all kind of, it's very quite internal. I want to be a better writer than I am. Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly the same for me. I wanted to challenge myself, and because I'd spent a long time in the Godblind universe with, all of the drafts that before I got signed up for the trilogy, I'd spent years writing Godblind. So I wanted to make sure that I have other stories in me, because that was something that I was worried about for quite a while, was that would I be able to write something other than that trilogy? You know, would I be able to step outside of that world? So I decided that I was just going to throw myself into something completely different. I mean, I say completely different, it's still epic fantasy, there's still battles, there's still, you know, all of that stuff going on, but you know, the setting and the things that I wanted to talk about are all much bigger and more ambitious. And I think that's one of the reasons why I found it much harder. And also for me, I mean, like RJ says, it's not about the success, but there is, you know, if I want this to be my career, then I have to keep on delivering, you know, and I can't just sit there and say, I wrote these 3 books and that's good enough, you know. There's always room for improvement. So I have found it more difficult, yeah. But again, that's probably me putting pressure on myself.
How about you, Sam?
Well, I mean, I would love to say that it's easier as you go along, but Anna and RJ are completely right. Even if it's only subconscious, you get a sense of reaching for something better and leveling up as you work, and so the standards kind of get higher, and so hopefully you get better and better as you go. I had a probably unusually bad experience in writing my second book. So these guys have got lovely completed trilogies under their belts and are zooming into new things, whereas I had I wouldn't recommend the experience, but I had the experience of, you know, writing a second book, and I wrote an initially far too long second book, which I then had to cut down by a third. It wasn't very fun. And then had it rejected by my publisher. So I then had to write an entirely new one from scratch. So I feel like I've had a bit of a baptism of fire in writing sequels. And surely it has to get easier from here, right? I'm writing something totally different now, not in the same world or in the same style. And I was sort of at first a bit paralyzed by, oh God, I don't know these people. I don't know who these characters are. I don't know how to do this. And you know, the whole having to make up entirely new things again. I'm pretty lazy, so that's always a challenge. But yeah, I'm having fun. The last couple of weeks, sort of forcing myself into doing nano. I've kind of been having fun, just blurting out something totally different and new. But yeah, I don't anticipate it will ever get easier. I think we'll just challenge ourselves perpetually.
I think in your case, it's probably guaranteed to get a little bit easier. Just because of what happened to you.
Maybe I'll have to write it 3 times next time.
No.
Maybe, yeah.
I've never come across a writer that worked as hard as Sam was doing when she was finishing off that book.
Yeah, she was an absolute machine. She was just like, how many hours were you up when you submitted that book? Was it like 28 hours or something?
Wow.
Oh, of the last few days beforehand.
The last few days, yeah.
I was up from the Sunday morning to the Tuesday, I think.
Wow.
Yeah, Sunday morning to Tuesday morning. Yeah.
Wow.
It was not fun. I only stayed awake and alive because of Anna, who's at the other side of the world, keeping me awake in the middle of the night, reading my stuff as my blog.
I was in full cheerleader mode, but
awesome.
But you know what? The new book is
friends get you
fantastic.
through these things.
Yeah, I agree.
You're very sweet.
You have been amazing. Everything I've seen about it has been absolutely fantastic, Sam.
It's such a good book, Sam. So good.
Yeah.
I wouldn't repeat the process of how to write it.
Yeah, I physically couldn't do it. I'm good for about 2 hours a day, and that's it. And then I'm out. And I stretch those 2 hours over the entire day. It takes me all day to do 2 hours of work. I don't know how you did it.
That's an ideal way of doing it. Only through necessity and panic, basically.
Coffee.
And coffee and a very supportive family bringing me things and tolerating my insanity. I'd get up in the morning. The morning that it was due, American time, so it was due the previous day, but because I'm a bit ahead, I had till about like 9 a.m. the next day, and I just worked straight through that entire night. And my youngest son got up in the morning and was like, "Mummy, why were you out in your pajamas in the middle of the night in the street?" Because I'd had a last minute absolute shitting my pants. I can't solve this plot problem at like 1 in the morning the night before it was due. And so in a panic in my pajamas, I was pacing up and down my street, hoping that the magic of walking would solve the plot problem, which it did, incidentally. So I highly recommend 1 a.m. pajama walks if you're completely stuck and completely panicking about not delivering your book on time.
There you go. Wisdom for the ages, that is. I will definitely be remembering that.
I'm the cautionary tale of this little thing. Be more like RJ and Anna, not like Sam.
No, but the result is really good though. I've read your book and I've read Anna's book. I haven't read Call of the Body Ships yet, but it's on my list. But I bet everything will be good anyway. Usually authors do a lot of research into building their world, their story, or their characters. What would you say is the most bizarre, ridiculous, or maybe insane research that you've done for your books? Anything?
I don't do research.
Really?
The whole reason behind writing fantasy is because I get to make everything up. That is the whole point. If I wanted to do research, the reason I did a bunch of it is that I love naval fiction, like Petrik O'Brien, but if you want to write that, it's really hard. It's really difficult, and there are a lot of people who are very into it who know if you make mistakes. There's a lot of research involved. Not a chance. That's work. I'm not doing work. I read a lot of books that I want to read anyway, because that's fun. So I had a good excuse to buy lots of books about sort of 17th and 18th century sailing ships. And I ignore most of it because it's inconvenient and stops me doing what I want to. And then I just make everything up. And then it gets annoying because you have to record what you've made up because you have to use it. And I knew how complicated sailing ships were. And then the most stupid thing I've done is make it all up from scratch, because then I had to remember it. And it's infuriating. It's driven me mad. I hate it.
Devastating when you have to remember things.
Yeah, because the fun is the first book where you get to make everything up, and then you set up a lot of rules for yourself that you have to obey for the other two books, and I find that quite upsetting because I don't like rules. I like making stuff up.
RJ.
So I'm writing another book for fun, which is set in our world, and I was googling how to bomb our local airport, and I suddenly realized that was probably a really bad idea. Googling how to get hold of fertilizer, how to make a fertilizer bomb, and then ways you could get into Leeds Bradford Airport.
Wow.
Oh, I'm on
Oh
the list.
my God.
Oh dear. So,
if you suddenly disappear, we're going to use this video as evidence that you were actually doing it for good reasons, not nefarious reasons.
We're setting up your defense right here.
Got a manuscript.
We're going to have to be character witnesses, aren't we?
Yeah. But yeah, that's probably the stupidest thing I've done, if not that weird.
How about you, Anna?
I had to do a lot of research into things that can kill you in tropical rainforests.
Oh dear God!
which was fun. So I discovered the manchineel tree, which is the most poisonous tree in the world and can actually kill you, because basically it's the entire tree is carcinogenics. But if you get the sap from the tree lands on your skin, it causes severe blistering. If it lands in your eyes, it can send you blind. So it's known as the blinding tree. And even the smoke from the wood, if you burn the wood, the smoke can give you like lung problems.
Oh, damn.
So that was really cool. So I was like, I'm definitely putting the blinding tree in my book. Because why wouldn't you when you've learned something like
That's
that?
crazy.
So I think that was my most insane one for this series.
How about
So
this?
far,
So I have probably more poison related things that put me on the police watch list if they were searching my Google history. So I obviously writing a story that the main characters are poison tasters, so there are inherently poisonings in the story. And I made a decision quite early on that I didn't want to use real world poisons because, like RJ, I am lazy and hate research. And I didn't want to be held to account for any actual. I didn't want people being like, "Oh, that wouldn't happen because this poison doesn't have that effect." I wanted to be able to use it conveniently as I chose in the plot. But obviously, and to the dismay of several readers who read City and expected there to be a poisoning in every single chapter, unfortunately, that doesn't really make for a particularly convincing plot if there's just a different poison that shows up every time. So my agent had this very clever idea of us enhancing the world building in the story by putting little epigraphs at the start of each chapter which describe a poison and its effects, which was a great idea and people loved them and they were heaps of fun to do, mostly. So I did a whole bunch of these for City, and by the end of making them up, it was starting to get pretty desperate because, of course, I left this to the last minute. This was a late idea in the publication process, so there were a lot of like 2 a.m. phone calls with my sisters, like, I need to make up another one with some different effects. Come on, help. So I got a bit sick of them by the end. But a lot of them are sort of based on real world things. But then I came along to the second book and I wanted to do something at the start of the chapters too because people really liked the first one, but I did not want to make up another 30 odd points because I don't have it in me. So instead I did little historical notes. So they're basically notes that historically the proofers, the poison tasters, have taken down about poisonings or attempted poisonings that have happened. So they're like little miniature stories at the start of each thing. And that was fun because it meant I could get in a bunch of real world poisonings or anecdotes or things that had happened, but I just really never got an opportunity to be used in the story because it's too much. And then I got to poison my friends. All the various poisoners and victims for my own personal amusement and in jokes. Most of them in the chapter headings are friends of mine. RJ and Anna are both in there. And probably I don't know if it's weird or bizarre, but the most fun and disgusting poisoning that I heard about. I actually don't know if it's true. But a friend whose sister is a nurse, who works at a nursing home, told me that there was a condition where someone could get so blocked up they couldn't
I know that part. Oh my god.
Anything. And eventually they get so blocked up they die, and when they die the poop comes out like their eyes and nose and mouth. And I don't know if this is in fact actually possible. A nurse has claimed that it is, but I did not care whether it was possible or not. I just knew that had to be in the book somewhere. So that formed one of the references to historical poisoning in the book.
That part really
I'd very much like the police not to look into why I looked up what will make you poop out your eyes.
So I researched sea shanties.
Sea shanties?
I used a lot of songs and poetry. It's much easier to an existing song and put your words over than it is to make one up from scratch. And the first book, I don't know if Anna and Sam find this. The first book, you're like, yeah, this is so much fun. And then in the second book, you're like, yeah, I can do this. And by the third book, you're just like, oh, I hate sea shanties. Every single one. I can't remember who it was that said to me is that probably a serial killer and an author's Google search history are interchangeable.
Very true.
Oh my god, this is so interesting. Do you guys do extensive outlines, or do you guys just let your characters guide you?
I had a really detailed outline for City, but but because of the rewriting, I ended up effectively just flying off to see my parents for Hollow. And I have a loose outline for the one I'm working on now. I would say that I very much like having an outline. I love having an outline there. That's amazing when you're like trying to get a word done. Oh, I've got a scene, that plan that tells me exactly what happens in the scene. That's very handy. I just hate doing them in the first place. So if someone could do them for me, that would be the ideal scenario for me.
I tend to have 4 or 5 things that I know need to happen throughout like the whole book. And then, but how we get to that point is completely character driven. So I tend not to plan how we get there. So I know that there needs to be this twist or this battle or this revelation at these points, roughly at these points in the novel. But then how we get there is just completely unplanned.
Yeah, you know the destination, but the route is a mystery. It's how you're going to get there. But I always say that I don't plan anything apart from knowing the end, but I do kind of have in my head a couple of nice things that I want to happen. Like in the Bone Ships, I had a very clear idea of the first time you see the sea dragon. That was always in my head. It was always something I was building up to, and I knew that I wanted to write as a book of 2 halves. That it's quite, can't say slow, deliberate for the first half, and that was a very made decision on my part. But that it's actually a bit of a lie, because when you sort of go to your publisher and say this is the book I want to write, with you might have 3 example chapters. We didn't actually with the Bone Ships. They will say, right, give us a synopsis. So I have to write a synopsis first of all. So that exists, even though I never really think about it again. For the Bone Ships, I did my synopsis in part poetry. It was part prose and part poetry.
Really?
Signed it on that. She was like, yeah, go on then. So that plan did exist with the Bone Ships, but I never look back at it once I'm off. I'm kind of working towards this end and knowing, and then Call of the Bone Ships, no idea where I was going until I was there. And the same, the Bone Ships Wake, which is the 3rd one, which I'm just editing now, and I knew the very end. I knew the end. I usually know the end of each book and the very end of the trilogy, because if you know those things, you can seed through all the books. Clues coming up to them, so it works as a second reading. It's like if you read the Assassin books again, there's stuff in it where you'll realize that I definitely knew how the books would end, because it tells you all about it. It's just coded into the book, and I like doing that. I like the fact that you can go back to a thing and suddenly realize, oh yeah, you did that.
One of my favorite things as a reader. It's really satisfying when you can do that. And
I agree.
See the groundwork later that the author has laid.
But also, I think a lot of what people might think is groundwork is happenstance, in that it's in that book, and I put it in the later books because it's in that book as well. And it's a really weird mix for a writer, in that if anybody says, "Are you really clever doing this?" you always say, "Yes, I was." Even if you don't remember doing it.
I like to think that we're doing it subconsciously. I do, because I'm sure you've all probably had the experience where you are sort of battling with how do you get to this particular point, and then you work it out, and then you realize, look, I've seeded this already. So it's like your subconscious was leaving you breadcrumbs, and you just had to kind of follow along. Of course, sometimes you don't do that at all, and you have to go back and stick those breadcrumbs in strategic places. It's very satisfying when you feel like, I mean, it's infuriating in a way, because you're like, could you not have let me in the secret subconsciously? Sometimes I feel like I'm kind of playing detective in my own books, because a lot of the time I'll just type things that like, oh, that sounds mysterious. I'll solve what that means later. And sometimes it works out perfectly, and other times it's just like, what were you doing, past Sam? What did this mean? I don't understand.
I love it when readers say, I really like how you explored this theme, or I really like how you portrayed this character or something, and you're like, Yes, God, I'm so glad. You're like, did I really do that?
It's a deliberate choice.
But yeah, always agree to it. Always just thank them and say, I'm so glad you noticed. Not many people do.
Nice.
And you're like, including me.
And the other thing, as a reader, you can play brilliant tricks on us, because what a lot of readers don't realize is that book you're reading now, we wrote like 2 years ago. So if you come up to me and say, oh, I love the bit where that dog grew wings and flew, I'll just agree with you, because I don't remember that book.
I believe them. I'd absolutely believe them.
Yeah, I'd go, yeah, I love that. Was my favorite bit too. I love doing that.
I assume that you guys don't reread your books again after it's published, except for sequel purpose or continuity.
Yeah,
I tend to.
Sorry, Sam.
What the hell did I call that stupid poison, for example?
I tend to listen to a little bit of the audio book, just to. I tend to sort of listen to a bit from every point of view character, just to see how the voice actor's done it, because I'm nosy and I like to see how someone else would represent my characters and the world that they live in and stuff like that. But apart from for, as you say, for sequel purposes, I don't reread them, no.
I see.
I'm the opposite of Anna. I can't listen to the audiobooks, even though I know Joe and Jude, who's doing the Boneships, doing brilliant jobs on them, because I'm so frightened I will listen to it and that voice will replace the voice in my head. And it's not a risk that I'm prepared to take. I might be able to listen to the Assassin books now, but I know that Joe Jameson does completely different voices for some of the characters that are in my head, because my mum reported back on them. She loved them. She did say, second one, I don't think I'd have read it if it was a book. It was quite hard going. So thanks, Mum. But it worked brilliantly as an audio book, Robert. And I think, oh, thanks, Mum. Thank you.
Thanks,
but yeah, the only time I've reread is I had to reread Age of Assassins, because Girton has this fighting system that's numbered. And I didn't write any of those numbers down when I finished the book. So.
We really need staff for this, don't we?
We do. I keep trying to find somebody who'll just set up a wiki for my books. If someone would just be really obsessive about me for a little bit, that would be lovely.
That would be just so convenient for us.
They can stalk me if they want. I don't mind. I'll cope with that. Just do the Wikipedia thing for me, so I can be really useful for the bunch. It's so complicated.
I think that will happen though in the future for all of you. Someone usually makes that wiki page a fan or something.
But it's no use in the future, because we've moved on to something else by now.
So we need a real time. Also, I think you probably need to be at a higher level of success before people start making Wikipedia books than I am, certainly. I keep thinking as I'm writing this new one, this time, every time I come up with some dumb world building thing, I should put it in the Scrivener file thing by the side so that this doesn't happen again. And yeah, I'm bloody not doing it, of course. It seems like such a great idea, but I'm not doing it. I'll do it later. I'm just laying myself all these square brackets of something here that I'll fill in later. Square brackets are the bane of my existence. My first drafts are full of them. Fix this later.
I've got a 28-page document for the Boneships about all the things in the world that I literally never look at.
So you're just justifying my laziness now. I could do a 28-page document, but I wouldn't use it anyway.
But once I've done it, it's so disorganized, it's actually useless, and I can find it in the text more quickly than I can in that document.
I get it.
Yeah. I've got a handwritten notebook of all the research that I did with things like the calendar system and like the types of food and the building materials and farming methods and all that kind of stuff. But it was literally every time I came across something that I knew I was going to need in my research, I just wrote it down, but nothing is in alphabetical order. So it basically goes from this is monsoon season to this is how you quarry limestone to this is what you might eat. And so I literally need to read the entire notebook every single time I want to find something, which obviously I don't do. So yeah, we're all in the same boat.
Yeah.
Do you find though that you can if you like need to know this thing, you can actually go back to the manuscript and think, well, actually, I think I can remember roughly when that happened, and you can search for a phrase and find roughly where that thing is anyway, and that's quicker than going and looking in any notebook or anything, because it's somewhere in there.
That's probably true.
Yeah.
I was just thinking, Ajay, that we should be training our children to this task of being like our little miniature assistants.
Yeah. I
couldn't. You know, couple of years, they'll be old enough to, you know, do admin tasks, right?
I couldn't, because my son's 10 and his grammar's already better than mine, and I couldn't. Bad enough that he can beat me at chess. I don't want to put the grammar in my books.
My kid beats me at chess too.
Yeah.
Both my kids can beat me at chess.
All right.
You watch Queen's Gambit, Ajay? I think you really like it.
I was about to say that.
What about you? My skull.
Oh, what's that?
What is that?
It's skull glass. Fanta. It's
not.
It's
cool. I was trying to guess what the drink was, but now I see the skull.
No, that is a skull.
Very appropriate.
Lots of sugar to keep me awake.
Hang on, it's morning there, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah,
it is.
Yeah.
Oh, I was going to say, I'm a sleepy one. 10 o'clock at night for me.
He's only just got up.
Yeah, I've only just got up.
Okay.
And I'm still not awake.
You're still sleepy.
Don't wake up till midday, really. It's not. This isn't my time.
Ajay, do you watch Queen's Gambit?
Oh yeah, it was brilliant. Probably the best thing I've seen on TV in a long time. That and
really good, right?
I think Queen's Gambit. Yeah. Just, have you seen it?
I haven't.
Yeah, I just watched it.
Oh, just amazing. And she's such a good actress. She can everything in just a little glance.
Like 80% of the show is just extreme close-ups of her face and moving chess pieces, and it was riveting. So she was doing a great job.
Yeah. Brilliant. I'm still thinking about it, and I kind of miss it, and I wish there was more of it. But I don't think it would be wrong to do more of it. It's told everything needs.
No, it's right. It's a complete thing. I was hoping that I would sort of like somehow learn something about chess. Because both my kids play chess and are good, and I know the rules, but not any like strategy or anything. So I'm bad. And I was hoping, like, if I watch this show really intensely, will I somehow become a chess genius? Didn't happen.
You know nothing about it, but it is just really good character.
I recognise a few of the names of moves that she referenced. I've been like, I've heard Dean say
that. So it's time to wrap this conversation. And I think we are going to wrap this up by asking the last question. What would be the most difficult part of your career so far? And do you have any advice for any new writer?
I think getting the first publishing deal is probably as difficult as it's ever going to get, because you're up against so many other unpublished authors who are all trying to do exactly what you're doing. You know, everyone, it feels like there's an infinite number of writers and a very finite number of agents and publishing houses.
Yeah.
So I would say that the most difficult thing was actually getting the contract in the first place. But my piece of advice would be finish the draft, because you know you can offer so much advice, and most of it is completely subjective to the writer in question. But I think that's the only one that actually is universal, is if you don't finish the draft, you're not going to get a publishing deal. You know, it's as simple as that. They need to know that you can actually finish a book before they're going to take you on. So that would be mine.
How about you, Archie?
I always think that the most difficult bit happens before you're published, and it's that time when you're writing and you just feel like nobody's paying attention to what you're doing, and it's hard and it's frustrating. Everyone goes through that, and I think that's why you sometimes see people go, "Oh, it's a big club and it's not what you do, it's who you know, which is rubbish. Incidentally, it's not true. It is all about the book that you write. There's a fair amount of luck in writing, I think, the right book at the right time, in that you can write something really good and it cannot be what people want. And that's not, it's not about always being good enough. And I think that frustration is probably the hardest bit. And once you're published, I don't really look at life as hard. I look at it as about to get better. I'm quite optimistic, but copy editing, I hate it. It feels like work. It's awful. And it's all about grammar. I don't really understand grammar. I punctuate by feel. And I could hear my English teacher from school crying. But as to advice, the only good and universal bit of advice I think I can give is don't quit. Because if you don't quit, you will get there. I was talking about luck, and my friend Jason Arnold said there is an amount of luck, but the longer you carry on, the better you get, and the smaller that pool of people who are available to get lucky becomes, who have the amount of skill. So if you just keep going, you will do it eventually, or you might do sort of reasonably well. Who knows? But just you won't get anywhere if you stop. So don't.
I think I already gave up my hardest part of the career. that was having to bin a book and start again, which hopefully will be the low point of things. So that's rough. I don't at all mind being edited, but it's pretty tough to be like, I thought this book was going to come out this year, and now it's not. Anyway, in terms of advice, I would say that probably the thing that would have been most helpful to me at an earlier stage is to find friends. I know that sounds sort of dumb. The writing stuff you can largely do yourself, and you can sort it out yourself. But the thing that has probably made the most positive difference to my writing career and life is like these guys, like having pals who are in a similar sort of position in their careers to you, having people you can talk to, so that you're not like, if something goes wrong, you don't have to be spewing out on Twitter and getting yourself in trouble. You can talk behind closed doors to people you trust about the madness that is this industry, and you can work through problems and share successes. And I can't even imagine trying to get through a writing career without my pals now. But when I first started, I didn't know anybody. So I just think it's true. Absolutely don't need to know anybody, because I never even showed my writing to anyone who wasn't immediately related to me before I sent it out to agents. I had no kind of writing community at all, and it really doesn't have to be that way. Now we've got the internet. There's so many ways to meet people and make friends, and go to cons and all that sort of stuff. None of which I did until I already had publishing deal in hand. I was too shy to meet anybody and talk to anybody because I didn't feel like I was. I wouldn't even join my local writers group. We have a very nice and very friendly speculative fiction group in my city, but I was too scared and shy to go to meetings because I didn't feel like I could. And so the first meeting I went to was after I already had a publishing deal, which is, it's way too late. You can get support much earlier. So that would be my bit of advice. You can learn about the writing stuff and you can largely teach yourself, but everything will be better if you have friends that you trust to kind of go through it with you.
Yeah.
There's a little thing that I always mean to say, because you'll hear lots of people going, oh, get your manuscript read and get people to rip it apart and get them to be really cruel to you and make you cry over every word. To a degree, that is useful at certain points in your career. Maybe not that much, because I would just not speak to somebody again if they did that to me. But having somebody who will just read your manuscript as you're writing it and tell you you're fantastic, even if you're not, is brilliant. It's absolutely one of the best things to have, because you will finish it then. And as Anna said, finishing it is the point. And then once it's finished, you can make it good. That's not that hard for once you get to a certain. But yeah, that little cheerleader is brilliant. I have friends who read it. I just know they will like it, and it's really lovely.
Yeah.
Yeah, my sister reads everything I write before anybody else does, and before it's really fit for public consumption. And she's just the best, amazing cheerleader. And it really, like, it does. You know, she's biased as all hell, but it still it keeps you going through. Yeah.
Yeah.
And they don't need to be a professional either. They just need to be someone who probably reads a lot, because then you've got a basic grasp of story structure.
Mm-hmm.
And then that's it. You know, if they see any gaping plot holes, then they can point them out. But yeah, you know, someone who is gonna like your book is probably really valuable. Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. Well, that's it for today's conversation. Thank you so much, you guys, for coming here. And remember that Call of the Bone Ships, The Stone Knife, and Hollow Empire comes out on the 26th of November. And thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye them
Thank
all.
you very much, Petrik.
Thank you so much for hosting. It's
Lovely
great
seeing
to
you.
meet you all.